Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to the free Zoom call.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to just get us started off with a little meditation. For little short 5-minute meditation, just to get us centered and grounded and just present here. So, if it's safe to do so, you can gently close your eyes. Just become aware of your breathing. The simplicity of the in breath, followed by the out breath. And on that in breath, breathing in peace and relaxation. And on that out breath, breathing out any and all tension. Breathing in this now moment. Breathing out all past and future. Just allowing yourself to be here now. The only time that actually exists. Past and future are actually only thought forms. Just bringing attention inside the body, bringing some awareness to the soles of the feet, and welcoming in that beautiful energy of Mother Earth, of Gaia, just allowing her energy to move up into you, nourish you, remind you of the truth of your being. Just watching as that energy moves everywhere it needs to go. It knows just where to go. Mother Earth's energy moves all the way into your body, all the way up to the very top of the head, the crown chakra. And there at the crown chakra, welcoming in a beautiful column of divine white light, source energy, pure fundamental beingness. Just allowing that energy to cascade into you, over you. Just resourcing every cell of the body. Moving all the way into the body, all the way down to the very tips of the toes and the soles of the feet. Now bringing some attention to the heart space. Just resting there. Noticing those beautiful energies of Mother Earth, Gaia, and of Source. Just resting as awareness. Feeling the stillness, the awareness, the love that you are, that all beings are. Recognizing that as each of us rests in this heart space, we are all one. Just sending out beautiful prayer for all of humanity to come to recognize this truth more and more. Amen. And so just beginning to come back, getting to slowly open your eyes, coming back into really awake, alert awareness, bringing attention back to the screen. And I'm just grateful for this time that we get to share with one another.
Thank you, Liesel. And thank you, beings of light. Liesel, for those of you who don't know, is a channel, and she channels a collective, a group consciousness that we affectionately refer to as the beings of light, or BOL for short. So again, welcome everybody. Welcome to the free Zoom call. We like to do one of these every few months. I know that there are people here tonight who are new to our work. So I want to take a moment just to introduce myself to you, and then I'll ask Liesel to introduce herself to you. So I'm a hypnotist. I specialize in something called a between life soul regression, or BLSR for short. This is a form of hypnosis in which you can talk with what is called your council of elders, the wise and loving beings who oversee your personal evolution and who know literally everything about you. So when you get to your council, you can ask any question you have about your life plan, anything that is happening in your life. Most people ask, what did I plan? Why did I make those plans? How am I doing in terms of fulfilling my plans? And how can I better fulfill my plans? And you can do the BLSR either in a group workshop, and we offer those regularly, or as a private session. I'm also the author of 3 books, Your Soul's Plan, Your Soul's Gift, and Your Soul's Love. The premise of all 3 books is that we ourselves plan our lives, including our biggest challenges, before we're born, before we come into body. And for those who have not seen the books, what I do is go through pretty much every major challenge we face here in the Earth School one by one. And in case study format, I examine why somebody planned that particular challenge before they were born. So the intention is to give meaning to suffering that to many people appears not to have any deeper meaning. And once you know what the deeper meaning is, that alleviates quite a bit of the suffering, and it allows you to learn the lessons in a much more conscious, much less arduous manner. So that's really the intention of the work. The first book in the series is Your Soul's Plan. That's the one to start with if you haven't read any of them. Your Soul's Gift goes into more difficult challenges than Your Soul's Plan. And the third book, Your Soul's Love, is different. That's actually specifically about the pre-birth planning of challenges in romantic relationships. And more information about this is on the website at yoursoulsplan.com. Liesel, do you want to introduce yourself to people?
Okay, sure. So I'm Rob's wife, Liesel, and I channel a collective consciousness that, as Rob said, we affectionately call the beings of light. And I actually came to this work, you would think me being a channel and Rob having written books that include channeled information, you would think that that's how we met. But actually, we were married for many years before I began to channel. And the channeling was a result of just really a period of a dark, not really dark night of the soul. I have struggled with obsessive compulsive disorder for many years of my life. And when COVID hit, and the obsessive compulsive disorder was very focused around germs, et cetera. And when COVID hit, it was sort of like, for somebody who has germ-based OCD, it's sort of like your worst nightmare. I mean, everybody was scared, but it was like terrifying. And so it just caused me to just absolutely surrender and just be in the state of sort of constant prayer of like, I surrender my life because I don't know what in the world to do here. And long story short, in that process of surrendering, I found deeper and deeper places within myself, within that space where we are all one. And that's when the communications from the beings of light began to come. So I share that little bit of my own history to let you know that, if you're in your own dark night of the soul, there is always a silver lining in there. And there's always a way in which it can be turned around and it can become actually the best thing that ever happened to you. I know when you're in the midst of it, that sounds ridiculous. But I do have to say that I am actually really grateful for having had OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, even though it was tormenting me for many years, because I don't think I would have had the awakening that I have had I not had it, had I not faced that challenge, had life not squeezed me in that way. So if you're feeling just sort of squeezed by life, know that it's life trying to turn you into a diamond. Yeah, I just wanted to share that.
All right. So for those of you who haven't been with us or a free call before, the format we like to use is to start with a brief teaching, which I will get to in a moment. And then Liesel and I will take questions that were submitted online in advance of tonight. Then we're going to spend a few minutes talking about upcoming workshops, and we'll give you discount codes to use if you would like to participate in those workshops. And then we'll take some live questions from people who are here. Now, if you're watching the recording at a later time, please know that the recording will end possibly quite abruptly, and I apologize for that, right after we talk about the upcoming workshops. And the reason for that is that if we want to put live questions on the recording, we have to have you sign release agreements, and we didn't want to get into all of that. So we thought it might be simpler just to end the recording before we get to the live questions. So just be aware of that if you're watching at a later time. In terms of tonight's teaching, as you all know, there's a lot of chaos going on in the world. There was a lot of chaos prior to the election in the US, and many of you feel that there's more chaos since the election in the US. So I want to talk about chaos. And to do this, I want to read you a short passage from my first book, Your Soul's Plan. This is, in case you want to look it up, it's pages 168 to 169. Those pages are in a chapter about the pre-birth planning of drug addiction. So to set the stage for you here, the two people who are the focus of that chapter are Sharon and Tony. Tony is Sharon's son. Tony planned before he was born to have a heroin addiction, which he did for reasons of his own, and I'm not going to go into that right now. After making that plan, he approached another soul in his soul group and said, "Would you be the mother who loves me and guides me through what is going to be a very difficult experience?" And that soul turned out to be his mother, Sharon. She immediately agreed to that request. And what's interesting there is that she had actually completed the Earth School experience. She was ready to go on to a so-called higher dimension. But when he came to her with that request, out of her great love for him, she dropped those plans immediately and said, "Yes, I would be honored to be the mother who guides you through this addiction." Now, when we researched Tony's pre-birth plan, I talk in a channeling session with a collective of angels, a group consciousness of angels. If you're not familiar with the concept of a collective consciousness or a group consciousness, those terms are interchangeable. As I understand it, it means that there are multiple beings who blend their consciousness and their energies together as one. And even though they're one consciousness, they still retain their individual consciousnesses and their individual identities. That's a bit of a paradox to the human brain, but that's the best way I can explain it to you. So we're talking here with a collective of angels. And I say to them, quote, I understand that souls can choose to incarnate in any location at any time. Why did Sharon and Tony choose to incarnate in the United States at this time in history? And the angels say, quote, there are many opportunities for them to experience their own limitations as well as to expand awareness, both for themselves and others around them. This is a time for exponential growth in your realm. Many who have chosen to incarnate at this time are finishing the reincarnation cycles and becoming ready to move on to other realms. And then I say, why are there more opportunities to experience limitation now than at other times, either in the past or in the future? And the angels say, quote, the planet is experiencing a systems breakdown. At those points in time when all systems break down, chaos is created. Chaos is a component, a very necessary component of limitation and growth. It is perhaps the most fertile space in which to learn. Let me reread the last part of that. Chaos is a component, a very necessary component of limitation and growth. It is perhaps the most fertile space in which to learn. So I wanted to share this with you as a way of reframing all the chaos that is going on in the world, which many of us find to be quite anxiety-provoking. So most of you know, I think, that the Earth is going through an ascension process. Ascension meaning literally ascending in vibration. As I understand it, we've already moved from the vibration of the third dimension or third density into the fourth dimension or fourth density. That's where we're at now. And we're on our way to the fifth dimension or fifth density, which is a vibration of unconditional love and oneness consciousness. So we are essentially going home while staying in a body on planet Earth. And that's what makes an ascension lifetime so special and really a great honor to be here for the ascension. Now, part of the ascension process is something called purification. Purification is caused by light direct from source, flooding the planet. It's that light that is creating the ascension process. The light has the effect of bringing to the surface, of bringing to conscious awareness, everything unlike itself, which is to say everything of a lower vibration. That's why you see all this chaos in the world today. We can't take those lower vibrational components with us into fifth density. What are the lower vibrational components? Anger, rage, blame, shame, guilt, anxiety, on and on and on. And this includes the lower vibrational systems, governments, businesses, organizations that we created while we were in third density, most of which are fear-based. They're not love-based. These fear-based institutions can't go into 5D. And so they have to be dissolved or dismantled. This is why you see so much chaos going on in the world. And regardless of what you may feel about President Trump, he is an agent of chaos, which is to say he's an agent of change. I'm not labeling the chaos he causes as either good or bad. I don't think that those terms are helpful in this context. But as you heard the angels say, chaos is necessary, and it is perhaps the most fertile space for growth. So I believe that his rebirth plan is to create a lot of the chaos that is needed in order to dissolve and dismantle these lower vibrational fear-based systems and institutions. People often ask, how long is this going to go on? I don't know for sure. I think that depends on the free will decisions that all of us make. It is likely, in my opinion, to become more chaotic before it becomes less chaotic. But I share all of this with you again, just as a way of suggesting how you might reframe the chaos in the world. We look at the news, the headlines, and we tend to judge what's going on. We say this should not be happening. It triggers fear, which lowers our vibration, which hinders the ascension process. You know, in one of my books, I think it was For Your Soul's Gift, I was doing a channeling session with Jesus. And I asked him, how does somebody know if they planned a particular experience before they were born? He had a very interesting and very surprising response. He said, whenever you think to yourself, this should not be happening, that thought almost always indicates that it's something you yourself planned before you were born. So when you look at the headlines in the news, you see all this chaos, and you think to yourself, this should not be happening, just remember what Jesus had to say about that thought. So that's the teaching for tonight.
I'd like to share a few things on that as well. So, you know, there's an analogy that the beings of light have given, which is that, you know, if you think of the process of transformation, if you think of what a caterpillar goes through to become a butterfly, there's this stage at which the caterpillar becomes incredibly chaotic, right? The caterpillar forms the chrysalis and basically turns into goo. And so as a caterpillar, that caterpillar is completely non-functional at that point. That caterpillar is in complete chaos. And from the perspective of if there was a caterpillar brain there that was able to look at it, you know, it would be like, oh my gosh, everything is falling apart. But that chaos needs to happen in order for the transformation into the butterfly. Another analogy that I'd like to share from the beings of light, and if you want to, you know, hear more about ascension, there's also going to be a channeling that's included in the follow-up email called Ascension from the beings of light. But the analogy that they give is that it's like having infection in the body. And let's say the infection is deep in the body. Well, it has to come to the surface in order to be released from the body. So you can think of right now all of this chaos or all this difficult stuff as like, you know, like a boil coming to the surface of the skin to be excised from the body of humanity. And one other thing that I want to address is for the most part, I'm not very good at following the chat because I'm not a multitasker, but I noticed one person's comment that they were saying that they did not know if they would survive the chaos. And what I want to say to that is that, in a way, none of us will survive the chaos. And what I mean by that is that our personality self, our small sense of self is also not going with us into the ascension. The you that you think you are, that is just a bunch of conditioning from your life, that is not you. You are the soul that came into this physical realm. You, and even beyond that, you are awareness itself. There is only one being or one consciousness on this entire call right now. We are literally all one with everyone and everything, not just on planet Earth, but throughout the entire universe and every universe that is. There is one awareness, field, consciousness, that which cannot be named, that always has been and always will be. And so it can feel scary that, you know, I might not make it, But if the I that you are referring to is a sense of a small self, a sense of, whatever your name is, and all of the things that you associate with that identity, just know that that is not you, and that does not need to come with you, because you are literally the eternity of the universe, and there is no way for any of us as this one being to ever die or be harmed or literally anything to happen to us, because we are completely eternal, we are completely infinite, and we're completely inviolable. So I just wanted to share that as well.
Okay, so we're going to take some of the questions that were submitted online in advance of tonight. There were several questions from parents who have either lost a child or are actually in the process of losing a child. And to each one of you, please accept my very heartfelt condolences. First and foremost, if you don't already know about an organization called Helping Parents Heal, I want to let you know about it. This organization, in my opinion, is hands down the best organization on the planet for parents who have lost a child or are currently in the process of losing a child. They have many online support groups. They have an annual conference. There may be groups in your local area, and if not, you could start one. So definitely look into that. Now, most of the questions from those parents said, why in the world would I plan this, or I can't believe that I would plan this. Understand that I have no desire at all to persuade you that you planned it. The work that Liesel and I do is an offering. It's not an attempt at persuasion. The idea of pre-birth planning is something that has been immensely helpful and healing to me in my life. And that's why I chose to share it with the world. But it's just an offering. If it resonates with you, pick up the ball and run with it. And if it doesn't, you can and you should set it aside. Having said that, there is a vast difference in perspective between you on the other side when you plan your life and you when you're here in a physical body. One of the main differences in perspective is that when we're on the other side planning an incarnation, we're very much aware that the incarnation is actually quite short, very brief. It's here and it's gone, like a clap of thunder. Most people don't feel that way once they get into body, and particularly if you're suffering, it's not going to feel that way. But when you plan your life, you know that an incarnation is actually quite brief. The second difference in perspective is that when you're back on the other side planning an incarnation, you are very much aware that nobody is permanently harmed by anything that happens here. You may or may not have that perspective while you're here in a body, but you do know that from the other side. And the third difference in perspective, from the other side, you are acutely aware of the fact that the healing, the growth, the learning, the wisdom that comes out of an incarnation will become part of you and will be with you literally for all eternity. Again, you may or may not know that while you're here in a body, but you do know that on the other side. So from that perspective, that a lifetime is actually very brief, nobody is permanently harmed by anything that happens here, and yet the wisdom becomes part of you literally for all eternity. From that perspective, it actually does make sense that some souls, not all, but some, would plan a very, very painful challenge like the death of a child. There's an entire chapter about the pre-birth planning of the death of a loved one in my first book, Your Soul's Plan. And the woman who is the subject of that chapter lost her only child to a drug overdose, and then lost a fiance just shortly after they got engaged. And we go into great detail exploring why she planned those two very, very painful losses. So for further explanation, I would suggest taking a look at that chapter. But for tonight, I just want to make you aware of these differences in perspective between when you're home on the other side planning a life and when you're here in a body. There were several people who asked, how do I know if I'm fulfilling my pre-birth plan, if I'm on the path that I planned before I was born? There are several things to look for. Joy. Things that you plan to do that are not challenges will bring you joy. Excitement. The things that you plan to do that are not challenges, and many of the ones that are, will create feelings of excitement. You can also look for something called the flow state or time distortion. So probably for every one of you, there's at least one activity that when you do it, it creates time distortion, meaning it will feel to you like only 10 minutes have gone by while you're doing whatever this activity is. But when you look at the clock, it will be 2 hours or 5 hours later. Any kind of activity that creates that sort of time distortion for you, that is something that is probably part of your pre-birth plan. There's something there that you wanted to explore before you were born. A number of people asked, can I change my plan once I'm here? And I'm going to turn this one over to Liesel because the beings of light have channeled a very helpful analogy to answer that question.
Yeah. So the analogy that they share is that, well, first of all, you don't just have one life plan. You have a multitude of life plans, and they vary according to vibration. So the analogy that the beings of light give is that it's like a stack of sheets of paper. And wherever your vibrational energy is, you can think of that as a sheet of paper. It's sort of like a quantum sliver of vibration is the thickness of a sheet of paper. And so you'll be accessing all of the life plan experiences that are on that sheet of paper. But if you increase your vibration, or if you do the practices, etc., that lead your vibration to increase, you can actually access different life plans. Because the learning that is meant to happen at the lower sheets of paper through pain and suffering, etc., that's no longer needed because you have actually, elevated your consciousness on your own. All life plans are meant to result in the elevation of consciousness, in your awakening. That's the whole reason why we're here, is to awaken to the nature of what we are while in the physical body. So if you're already starting to do that, then you actually don't need some of the experiences that might be on the lower sheets of paper, because you've already raised your consciousness to a certain level. So that's why sort of being proactive about your own evolution is so very, very important, because you're going to open up new life plan possibilities for yourself as you do that. So I will also include that channeling in the follow-up email. I believe it's entitled, it's got a long title. It's something like a way to better understand how pre-birth plans relate to vibration, or something along those lines. So if you want, you can read the whole channeling.
So as you probably gathered from what Liesel just said, the vast majority of what we plan prior to birth is not planned as a certainty. It's planned as a possibility, or sometimes a probability. There are a small number of things that are planned as certainties. What would those be? Well, for example, your choice of parents. Obviously, once you're born, you can't change who your parents are. So that's something that's planned as a certainty. And you do choose your parents before birth, and they choose you to be their child. Or another example of a certainty would be, let's say that you plan before incarnating to be born with a physical handicap that can't be treated by medical science in the time period in which you're incarnating. And that's something you would know before coming to body. then short of what we call a miracle, you will have that handicap for the duration of that lifetime. That's something that's planned as a certainty. But the number of things planned as certainties like that is actually very, very small. The vast majority of pre-birth plans are potentials. They're individual sheets in that stack that Liesel just talked about. And whether or not a potential actualizes depends upon your vibration, which depends upon your free will choices.
One other thing I want to add about that, in case some of you are thinking about this, is I've had people ask about, well, what happens, if I raise my vibration and then my vibration goes back down, am I just accessing the lower level plans again? Well, the plans are sort of always being like updated, so to speak. So if you raise your consciousness to a level that previously you have not experienced before, that is part of your neural networking then from then on, even if you sort of drop back down into a lower vibration. So if you were to stay at this level down here just indefinitely, or in another scenario, you would raise your vibration up to here and then fall back down. When you get back down to this kind of vibration, the plans that are down here will be a little different than they would have been had you not raised your vibration at all. So I just wanted to address that little sort of sub point.
So related to the stack of sheets of paper analogy and free will, some people wrote in and asked, how can we have free will if we plan our lives before we're born? And I like to answer this question with a hypothetical story. So in this hypothetical, there are two souls who I will call Sally and George. And Sally has had a number of past lives in which she made certain plans before coming into body. But then when she got here, she deferred to the wishes of others. She let other people tell her what to do and how to live her life, which is not an uncommon thing to do. So when she has her life review at the end of those incarnations, she sees that she has this tendency to defer to the wishes of others. And she resolves to heal this. So she plans for her next incarnation to bring back into body energetically the tendency to defer to the wishes of others, again, not for the purpose of expressing it, but rather for the purpose of healing it. So that's her pre-birth plan. Now there's another soul in her soul group, George. And George has had a number of past lives in which he did the opposite of Sally. He had power and he exercised it inappropriately over others. He dominated others inappropriately. He told other people what to do and how to live their lives. When he had his life review at the end of those incarnations, he saw that he has this tendency. And like Sally, he decided he wanted to bring it back into body energetically, not for the purpose of expressing it, but rather for the purpose of healing it. So that was George's pre-birth plan. Now, because Sally and George are in the same soul group, Sally knows about George's pre-birth plan. So she goes to him before either one of them is born, and she says something like, "Hey, George, I'm taking back into body the tendency to defer to the wishes of others for the purpose of healing it. I see that you are planning to take back into body the opposite tendency, the tendency to dominate others, also for the purpose of healing it. Why don't we make a pre-birth agreement that we will marry at about the age of 30? And our intention here is that although it will be a turbulent marriage, hopefully I will learn to stand up for myself and you will learn to respect the wishes of others." And George says, "This is a great idea, let's do it." So that's their pre-birth agreement. Now let's say that when Sally is here in a body and 25 years old, she gets a job with an employer who is treating her with a profound lack of respect and kindness. And let's say that she marshals her internal resources and she takes a stand. She says to her boss, "Stop. You may not treat me this way. If you want me to continue working here, you must treat me with respect and kindness. In the moment Sally takes that stand, there's an enormous increase in her vibration. If she can sustain that heightened vibration until she's 30, now one of two things is going to happen. Either she and George will never meet because her vibration is up here, his is down here. By virtue of the law of attraction, they're going to go right by each other. Or if they do meet, it's one date and then nothing more comes of it. Again, because their vibrations are so dissimilar, there's no resonance that would lead to a second date. So in this hypothetical story, Sally has used her free will to learn the planned challenge, which was to stand up for herself. And that in turn has obviated the need for the planned marriage, the difficult marriage. Now, and so it simply doesn't happen. Now, some of you are going to say, well, what about George? Doesn't he still have to learn his lesson? Yes, he does. And he will draw or magnetize to himself other opportunities, relationships, challenges, circumstances, whatever it might be, that will give him the opportunity to learn to respect the wishes of others. But again, the point here being that there's this very intricate and elegant intersection between free will and pre-birth planning. There were a very large number of questions all along the same lines, basically saying, help me understand why I planned X. And then X could have been just about anything. Rather than take one of those questions individually and give a specific answer, I'm going to answer all of them in a general way. And to do that, I'm going to call up the whiteboard.
Prepare yourselves.
And whenever I try to use technology, there are often unpredictable consequences and undesirable consequences. Okay.
Sometimes entertaining consequences, though.
For you, perhaps. All right. So, Liesel, you're seeing the whiteboard?
I am seeing the whiteboard. And now I'm seeing some strange, very strange lines.
See, here we go with the unpredictable consequences. I'm not drawing that. Why, Stephanie, why is that happening?
I tell you what,
I'm not sure.
As you describe it, I'm going to draw it on this note card.
Oh, wait,
I don't know what happened.
Let me try one more time here. Okay, I can work with that.
Okay.
All right, so here you have a graph, your basic XY axis. The x-axis, or the horizontal axis, represents time. I'm just going to put a T. The Y, or vertical axis, represents your level of consciousness. I'll just put a C. So a very common pre-birth plan looks like this. You're born here. This is the level of consciousness you bring into the body at birth. And then the plan calls for you to spend a number of years doing this. So you're going along, making incremental gains in consciousness. And then the plan calls for this to happen. This point here is a pre-planned inflection point. It's most likely a life challenge that you yourself planned before you were born in the hope that your level of consciousness would spike up like this. The inflection point can be almost anything, but given humanity's current state of evolution, certain challenges are chosen much more commonly than others as inflection points. One of the most commonly chosen inflection points is the death of a loved one. If it's not the death of a loved one, very often it will be an illness, and if it's an illness, very often it will be cancer. If it's not the death of a loved one or an illness, very often it will be an accident. And I'm putting accident in quote marks here because it isn't really an accident. So again, the inflection point can be almost anything, but those are three of the most commonly chosen inflection points. Now, to all of the people who wrote in saying, help me understand why I planned whatever the inflection point might be in your particular case. When we talk about your level of consciousness spiking up like this, that can mean a number of different things. And one of the most important meanings that I've seen for that in the research that I've done for my books, I talk about it in terms of what I call divine virtues. So a divine virtue is a quality that is very important to your soul. And when I went into people's pre-birth planning sessions by working with mediums and channels for the books, when people were planning big challenges for themselves, when they were planning these inflection points, very often the discussion in the pre-birth planning session focused on one or more divine virtues, qualities that they hope to cultivate by going through the experience of the inflection point, the life challenge. Over a period of time, I put together a list of the ones that came up the most often. I think there are now 28 on the list. It's things like faith, trust, patience, empathy, unconditional love, kindness, gentleness, and on and on. When you cultivate or express, and it can be either, cultivate or express one of the divine virtues, that creates an increase in your vibration. That's the spike in consciousness that we're looking at on the graph here. So when you pose the question, help me understand why I planned X, think of it in terms of divine virtues. Ask yourself, what qualities could I cultivate and or express as a result of going through this particular challenge, whatever it might be? For those of you who are interested in exploring this more deeply, write to me at rob.schwartz@yoursoulsplan.com and ask me to send you the list of divine virtues. I will be happy to send it to you. You can look it over and decide for yourself which ones you may be working on through a particular challenge. I will add here that the average person, as I understand it, is working on 2 or 3 virtues in a lifetime. Occasionally, somebody's working on 4 or 5, which is pretty rare. As far as I know, nobody is working on more than 5. That would be too much for anybody to take on. And again, the purpose of the challenge is to provide you with both the opportunity and the motivation to cultivate and express the virtues.
And I will say, if you find that this information is really of interest to you, we don't have it on the calendar yet, but probably sometime coming up in this calendar year, we will do a Divine Virtues workshop. And Rob has devised this really ingenious exercise that you can basically take a look at your life and your biggest challenges and discern which virtues you're working on. And it really, people come away from this with sort of like, oh my gosh, like I really, really understand now why I planned this. And they really get a lot of information about their challenges and why they took them on. So just watch for that if this topic is of interest to you.
Yeah, and the value in knowing which virtues you're working on is that, well, for one thing, it creates deep healing in regard to past challenges, because now you can understand what they were all about. But you can also work with it proactively, because anytime in the future a new challenge comes along, then you just say to yourself, okay, I know that I am in this incarnation to cultivate and express whatever it might be, patience, gratitude, unconditional love. Knowing that, how do I work with this new challenge to cultivate and or express those particular virtues? So it has the effect of immediately assigning deeper meaning to something that otherwise might appear to be pointless suffering. And then you can learn those lessons in a much more conscious and much less painful manner. And the last submitted question I wanted to speak to, there was a very intriguing question asked about whether Judas and Jesus had a pre-birth plan to do what they did together. My understanding is that the answer to that question is yes. And the really interesting thing about this, we can ask the question, if this is part of a pre-birth plan, which is my understanding, why did Jesus choose Judas in particular to play that role? Why him and not another soul? My understanding is that Judas was chosen by Jesus for that role because Jesus knew that he could trust Judas to play the role the way he wanted it to be played. And this is essentially what all of us are doing here on the earth plane. Most of us don't have lives that are quite as dramatic as what Jesus and Judas were doing. But what we're doing here is we're playing roles that we ourselves have scripted. We are like characters in a stage play. And we have scripted these roles so that we can have certain experiences and learn certain lessons. Well, if you are planning a big challenge and it involves other people needing to do certain things, who are you going to choose to play those roles? You're going to do what Jesus did. You're going to choose souls that you know you can trust. And that was the core of the pre-birth plan, as I understand it, between Jesus and Judas. Okay, so let's talk about some workshops that are coming up. On Sunday, March 2nd, we have a Between Lives Soul Regression workshop. So this is the Between Lives Soul Regression that I talked about earlier, done as a group. It works just as well in a group as it does in a private session. The BLSR starts with certain relaxation steps to help you relax physically and mentally. Then I'll guide everybody in the workshop into a past life. It's almost always a past life that had a big impact on the plans for your current lifetime or is in some way thematically related to the current lifetime. You experience 4 different scenes in the past life, the last of which will be the death scene. The part of your consciousness that is having this experience will leave the body in the death scene in the past life and cross back over to the other side, which is actually a very easy and gentle process. When you get back to the other side, most likely you'll be greeted by a spirit guide or several guides. Your guide will tell you why you were shown those past life scenes, what's important to know, how it's relevant to your current lifetime. And then your guide will take you to your council of elders. When people get to their respective councils, I'll prompt them to ask a very long and extensive series of questions that will cover all the major areas of your life. So by the time this process is over, and it will take about 2 hours, you should have a pretty good idea of what you planned, why, how you're doing, and how you can do better. And there are many opportunities to ask any questions unique to you that I'm not prompting the group to ask. So you can ask your council literally any question. And if it's for your highest good to know the answer, they will be happy to answer the question for you. So this is Sunday, March 2nd. Then there's another one on Sunday, April 13th. And for those who are interested in joining us, the discount code is Soul Plan 15. Soul Plan is in all capital letters, Soul Plan 15. That will take 15% off the registration fee. And that code is good until midnight on February 24th. And then on Monday, April 14th in the evening, 7 p.m. US Eastern Time, we're going to do a contact a deceased loved one regression. If any of you took our old 2-day workshop that we stopped offering a couple of years ago, you'll remember that the contact a deceased loved one regression was part of day 1 in the 2-day workshop. So this is not a between lives soul regression. It's a regression intended to bring you into contact with one or more loved ones who are back on the other side. And that includes pets, by the way. People often make contact with pets who are back on the other side. And then depending upon the form the contact takes, you may be able to ask questions about your pre-birth plans with them, or it might just be more of an emotional, hugging, loving kind of a reunion. There are many experiences that are possible. The discount code for that is also Soul Plan 15. Again, all capital letters. That will take 15% off. Lisa, anything you wanted to? Oh, Stephanie, you were going to explain. Well, go ahead.
Yeah. So you'll see if you guys look that the ones in April still have early bird pricing. So this discount code is only good on the general price, so we can use it down the road a little bit too. But this will really be good because the early bird pricing is taken off the March one. So if you try to use it on a double discount, it doesn't work. So if you have issues with that, that's why. But just let me know. Or you can always email me and I can help with any questions. But I'll put it in the email with the replay tomorrow too to kind of clarify it as well with that code.
And I see that somebody is asking in the chat box, are these experiences guaranteed? No, they are not. No hypnotist, myself included, can ever guarantee that you will go into trance. The odds are very much in your favor, but it's not something I can guarantee. I will say if you sign up for any of the regression workshops, we send you a lot of extensive materials in advance to help you increase the likelihood of going into trance. So there's a recorded orientation with all sorts of tips and pointers about how to maximize the chance of going into trance. I think that recording is about 20 minutes long. If you listen to that a day or two before the workshop and have that information fresh in your mind, that will really help you. There's also another 20-minute recorded meditation that I created. You use that to practice relaxing to the sound of my voice. If you do that a number of times before the workshop, that will also be very helpful to you. So the odds are in your favor, but it is not guaranteed.
Another thing I want to mention is that we also have a membership program called Rise to the Path that meets monthly, meets the third Tuesday of every month. However, the meetings are always recorded. So if you can't make the live meeting, you can always access the recording. And it is just an amazing, amazing community of like-minded, loving people that just are so supportive to one another. And, you know, we really address whatever the group wants to talk about, whatever the individuals in the group want to talk about in terms of their spiritual awakening. We focus on every month now. We've been doing this for a few months. We focus on a new divine virtue to work on during the month to implement in your life. And I think the members are really enjoying that. And as a member, you also have access to the membership homepage, which has a year's worth of previous recordings of the meetings, as well as a whole slew of excerpted meditations. I almost always lead a long meditation from the beings of light in the meeting. And there's also like all the channelings for the beings of light. So there's a whole bunch of resources that you have access to. So anyway, if that resonates for you, or if you're really looking for a community of like-minded people, I highly recommend it. I love our meetings every month.
Okay, so we will pause the recording now for those of you who are watching at a later time. I hope you'll join us live sometime, and we will go into the live Q&A.